The Tyburn Tree. When I went on my first trip to London, my buddy asked me to see if I could find the spot where the Tyburn Tree had stood. And no, it wasn't an old tree. The Tyburn Tree was the gallows in London, back in the olden days when they strung people up in public. It was in operation from 1196 to 1783 and hangs such notable criminals as Gentleman Jack Sheppard, public enemy number 1 in 1724, an infamous escape artist, thief-taker general Jonathan Wild, organized crime boss Catherine Hayes, who was actually burned at the stake for killing her husband, Jenny Diver, famous female pickpocket, Earl Ferrers, the last peer of the realm to hang, Mrs. Brownrigg, who flogged a servant girl to death, plus countless traitors, murderers, highwaymen, forgers, tramps, whorers, and thieves, thousands of them. The hangmen included the famous or infamous Jack Ketch and Laughing Jack Hooper, an ugly cuss who tried to cheer the condemned by acting the clown and telling jokes. They could hang up to 24 people at a time. Thousands of men, women, and children were hanged, some for stealing items worth only a few cents, or pence. They slowly strangled at the end of a rope, unless they had friends willing to pull their leg to help the poor struggler out of their misery. The executions at Tyburn were spectator sports, vast crowds turning out to enjoy gallows or gala days. Some bodies were turned over to the medical students for dissection, which seemed to worry many of the condemned more than death. It was important for the condemned to show bravery, to make a good death. Any sign of fear would be treated by the mob with hoots and derision. But a sick joke was the fact that vast crowds, sometimes as many as 20,000 people, many of them drunk on gin, the crack cocaine of the 1700s, were filled with pickpockets, petty thieves, and prostitutes, some of them destined to die later on the very same tree. So much for the deterrent effects of capital punishment. My buddy wanted me to find it, and so I did. The actual spot where the hanging tree stood is a traffic island at the junction of Edgware Road, Bayswater Road, and Oxford Street, just past Marble Arch. That's right, it's a traffic island. Do not pass go. But I knew it was the right spot, as there was a historical marker towards the center of the island. It was a circle, marked with an X, and said, "The site of Tyburn Tree." My buddy told me when I found it, I should stand right on the spot, right on the X, and so I did. The first thing that struck me was the stench, a miasmal pong suggesting the reek of thousands of unwashed bodies. And then I saw them and heard them. I was standing above a huge crowd, or rather mob of humanity, all dressed in clothing from the 1700s, although many seemed to be wearing little more than rags. They were all bellowing and laughing and screaming at the same time, creating a cacophony of yowling. And they were all looking at me, some pointing at me and gesticulating. Suddenly, I felt a powerful blow at the back of my neck and found I couldn't breathe. There was something around my throat which constricted the airway, and I began to panic, which made me struggle even more. But try as hard as I might, I couldn't get any air into my lungs. The noise of the crowd increased. They seemed to be cheering or jeering, but the clamor was soon replaced by another sound, the roaring of my heartbeat in my ears. Everything went red, bright blood red, but quickly began to fade to gray, and I realized I was being hanged. At Tyburn, dancing the Tyburn jig, with a rope choking the life out of me. Everything went black. The next thing I remember is lying on my side on cold cement and thinking, gee, heaven feels just like a traffic island. Unless it's the other place. Opening my eyes, I found myself surrounded by a circle of concerned faces, my wife kneeling and rubbing my hands. "It'll be all right now," sang a cheerful English voice. "Happens all the time. Stand on that damn spot and they think they're being turned off at the old tree. Happens 2-3 times a month. It'll be all right. That damn spot is haunted." Embarrassed, I got to my feet and hastily thanked those who had come to my aid. The cheerful Englishman, who looked like the old-time comedian Sidney James, had a newspaper stall just across from the traffic island and had a sideline rescuing tourists who were being hanged. "I don't know what would happen if we didn't pull 'em off in time," he said with a wink. "I expect they'd die." Die? I bought a copy of the 14 Times from his stall as a way of saying thanks. I was completely recovered from my ordeal by evening, although I did have a sore throat and my neck was red. I guess you can't be strangled without it leaving its mark. No pun intended. I medicated with Foster's and Stella. Was it a hallucination? Then why the physical after effects? Was the Tyburn marker a portal to the past? Was I actually swinging from the Tyburn tree? Would I have died? I told my buddy about my experience when I got home. "Oh, I knew that would happen." "You knew?" "Oh, yeah. I read in a Colin Wilson book. Anybody that stands on that spot starts choking, like they're being hanged or something." "And you knew that was going to happen?" "And it happened to you. Hanged at Tyburn. That's so cool." "No, I didn't murder him. I was tempted, but I didn't murder him. After all, I'd already been hanged once. And how does the old saying go? Hung once, twice shy?" P.S. But sometimes, late at night, I can't help wondering, did I make a good death?